Hello, this is Kyla from Hidden Gems Literary Emporium in New Brunswick. We are here with Michael Lewis, the author of How to Find a Good Companion, which is on display here at Hidden Gems right now. So come on by and get your copy. Now, so there's two titles to this book, and the second one is kind of comical, which is even among those who have been picked over, cold out, damaged, dumped, and left for dead. And so, Mr. Lewis, why don't you start by just introducing yourself and letting us know why you decided to put that subtitle in there.
Okay. I'm Michael Lewis. I'm 70 years old. I had that birthday back in May. I have, it took me until I was 22 to get my college degree. And I worked after that 40 years. And I did industrial engineering work and management consultation. And I helped three companies win the National Quality Award.
Wow.
It was really important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm happily married. I've been married to my current wife 35 years.
Wow.
We have four daughters, and I am motivated and comforted very much by God and Christ Jesus. Now, three things are important to me:
Mm-hmm.
staying close to Jesus, staying close to my family and friends, and publishing my four books. Now,
Wow.
I have the How to Find a Good Companion book as one of those. The second one is Christ provided blessings for our success. The third one is I provided 100 poems in this book for my special daughters.
Oh, wow.
I wrote 1,000 poems over the last 35 years, and I
Wow.
took out my best 100 for my daughters and put it in that book. And I took my best 100 out of that 1,000 for my wife and her friends, and that's in that book.
Wow.
So,
Um, okay. I do want to ask you about your poetry, just really quick, since you just brought it up. Why do you enjoy writing poetry so much?
it helps to communicate my love to anybody I write it to. I've written a few more than to my wife and my daughters. Uh, I've had a friend who was on her deathbed that
Mm,
I wrote a couple of poems to.
mm,
But anybody that's important to me that I want to make a good impression to, I write them a poem.
wow. Okay. Um, yes, my husband and I, we always talk about, well, we also write poetry. Our poetry book is coming out next month. And
Oh,
so we always talk about how poetry is a great way to talk about um, to, to to add some butter and sugar on things that you want to communicate, so like you profess your love for things and for people through poetry. Sometimes you talk about difficult things, for example, you said your friend was on her deathbed, and
uh-huh.
poetry is a good way to communicate how you're really feeling. So I appreciate that. And 1,000 poems is a lot. That
Yeah.
is.
I wrote one for them every special day,
Wow.
every year, every big holiday like Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving and their birthday. I wrote a poem, or if they graduated from school, I wrote them a poem there. Or if there was just a special occasion I wrote them a poem. So I did that every year for 35 years.
Wow. That is pretty remarkable. That is dedication and, like you said, love. And so, and those are some things that you do talk about in this book, How to Find a Companion. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why you decided to write this book, and also why you decided to include this subtitle in here?
Okay. I wrote the book because I wanted to help people who were not married.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very important thing, is to be married. Uh, and although we're special people, the book provides ways for long-term uh, relentlessness and best soulmate.
Hmm.
My current marriage uh, provided love. I provided love for my spouse. She was wife number two. She and I have been married for 35 years.
Wow.
I had a first wife before her that I was married for 15 years
Mm.
that didn't work out. And when I married my second wife, I had a lot of ideas about this book that I
Mm.
included. Plus, I had ideas when I was married the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, on the book title, of course, the first title is How to Find a Good Companion.
Mm-hmm.
The second title, even among those who have been picked over, called out, damaged, dumped, and left for dead. And when people see the book, they usually laugh because they think that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But for everyone involved in dating or marriage, that's not always, that's sometimes, a lot of times, the case. And
Mm-hmm.
if somebody's treated poorly by their spouse, they'll either create distance between them or they will get a divorce if they're married.
Right. One thing that you wrote about in the book that I thought was very interesting, towards the beginning, you include a statistic about, it's right in the preface. You include a statistic about the millions of Americans who are either single, divorced, or widowed.
Yeah.
And that number was kind of alarming to me, you know. So you just mentioned in your introduction that you think that it's very important to be married. So why do you feel as though it's important to be married?
God and Jesus decided that we all should be married. Uh, they started out with Adam and Eve and put love in their hearts, and it led to them having babies. And their babies were born with love in their hearts, and they had babies, and that went on and on and on in large numbers. And it led to today's people uh, with marriage and non-marriage because it was important to them. But I looked at the U.S. Census Bureau data in
Mm-hmm.
2019,
Mm-hmm.
and it showed a total in the United States of 331 million people, including young people.
Mm-hmm.
240 million were adults and eligible for marriage, but only 130 of those 240 were married, and
Mm-hmm.
110 million, 46%, were not married. They were either never married They were married before and divorced,
Mm-hmm.
or they were widowed because their spouse had died. And that's why those numbers are in there.
Wow. Okay. Um, I think that was a great way to start too, by letting people know about that information. And one thing that is cool about this book is the setup. So you have pictures in there and you use examples based on real people that you've met in your life. Can you talk a little bit about the characters in the book and why you chose to include these drawings?
Well, there are eight people covered in the book, four women and four men. And I took out a woman and a man to talk briefly about. In the
Mm-hmm.
book, there's a lot of detail covered.
Mm-hmm.
This one is a woman named Helen.
Mm-hmm.
She's beautiful and she's in her mid 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Her lifetime goal has been to be a model. In high school, she was the homecoming queen.
Hmm.
And since then, she has avoided all serious dates with males because she's concentrating on being a model. But now she's decided that she wants to be married, so she's learning how to find a good companion.
Mm.
Then there's this male. His name is Henry.
Yep.
Henry is an honest, religious 30-year-old man. He has lived with his parents since high school. He has spent all of his time working on a delivery job, picking up food and shopping for his home family, and watching TV with his parents. Because of his living style, all girls have ignored him. Now he's more interested in being married, and he has changed some and is looking for a good companion.
Hmm.
Now, those are the only two that I pulled pictures out of and talked a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but the book covers quite a bit of them. And those people have characteristics that are normal.
Hmm.
I pulled them and they have behaviors that are similar to real people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the people in there are like some of my friends to a little degree. But you'll understand if you look at the book how they are working toward getting married.
Right. And so were these people that you have come across, or were they people that came to you in search of help?
Mostly that I've come across.
Oh.
There are a few people who uh, come to people like me, I guess, and ask for advice.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about giving them advice, and it's turned out to where they really didn't want that. So I just put it in this book.
Right. You give a lot of different pieces of advice for someone who is in search of a someone who is in search of looking for a companion. Would you say that this advice is ageless or for a specific age group?
Well, I think it covers your whole life.
Hmm.
Now, with me, I started having a need for marriage or interest in marriage when I was a teenager.
Hmm.
And from then until now, it's important to me. And it's important because God and Jesus put put it in my heart that it's important. So uh, I've I think that's probably the same case for everybody. That,
Hmm.
but even if you're an old person, having and you're unmarried, it it may be important for you to be married then. You can't
Right.
be too old.
Right. And I love that message that you can never be too old or sometimes we go through things in our life that may try and convince us that we're meant to be alone. Like the title of your book says, we feel damaged, dumped, picked over. But my husband always says that you can't give up on love. And love is so apparent, even in a time where it might, in your life, where it might feel like you are unloved. But there's so many examples of love in the world. And so, yeah, I love what you just said, that you're never too old for love. And so that leads me to my next question, because people are different and couples are different. So, do you think that different couples act differently? And for people who have different personalities, would you say that the advice that you give in this book could still help them?
Yeah, I think I had some notes on that. Uh, we're still in, aren't we? I had a beep on mine.
Oh, take your time.
um, I'm married because my heart was interested, like I said, as a teenager, and it's like my whole life. But when I was dating, when anybody's dating, if they're having a bad situation with their dating person, it's best to quit dating them. If you're married and they start on you, you can either create more distance in the married so that you don't get hurt so much, or you can divorce them. And those are some of the reasons why uh, it's good to stay close and not be hurt by your spouse.
Right. What do you think, or what would you say are some of the best ways for couples to stay close and have a long lasting marriage like how you've had for 35 years, right?
Uh-huh. Well, I have a list of things that I follow on that. Um,
Okay.
6 things. Uh, when you're married, stat, start, start and go forward. It has things changing that you must have with good acceptance. That's the first one. The second one is keep your spouse as your most important friend among everyone. The third one, when your spouse has a need, you need to do your most in helping. Number four, when your spouse has success, you need to be happy for it. Number five, when your spouse has a problem, you need to help with it. And number six, you should always notice the situation and be ready to react well.
Right. I love that list. I really do. And one of the things that stood out to me was celebrate each other's successes, be happy for one another, and be a part of the achievements that each other accomplish. Um, know and be willing for things to change, because that's just life. Things change over time. We have to be adaptable, right?
Yeah, my wife and I were in different situations when we got married,
Mm-hmm.
and they've changed a little bit every year since then. So things are a lot different now.
Wow. And change is not always bad, right? Change is good.
It's always bad.
No, I said change is not always bad. Change is good.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I love that list. Something that just caught my eye on the cover of your book, at the bottom it says less stress and more success. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's the name of my business.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
LSMS, less stress and more success. And I created that 30 years ago.
Wow.
But here recently, we've been working on a website identifying uh, that business name.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of them now. There are a lot of them on the computer. So I had to
Wow.
have a different website. And my website is Jesus and My Books
Hmm.
is my website that I have now. That's just about finished and ready to go. These 4 books will be on that one, along with a photograph of me and a photograph of Jesus, my best friend. And they're on Amazon. Uh, in addition to that, they're going to be put on file in different bookstores.
Right. Okay. Um, One last question I have for you. I know you have additional books coming out. Um, do you think do you foresee yourself continuing to publish books, poetry books, self-help books? Do you have any ideas about maybe publishing novels or fiction or nonfiction? So just tell us some of your literary goals moving forward.
I'm put together a 5th book that had to
Okay.
do with poems
Okay.
for all of my special people in my life, and I'm waiting for these to get moving quickly
Right.
before I'll get that one published.
Okay.
But those other things you mentioned, I'm not going to write a book
Okay.
now unless something comes along.
Right.
This one on Christ Jesus provides blessings for your success. I didn't come with that idea. Uh, I had to have brain surgery back
Mm,
in 2012.
wow.
And a year after I recovered, I started getting messages from Jesus to produce or publish that book. So I published that one for that reason. And then the
Okay.
other 3, I came up without that thing. On the one with Jesus, I put off every day that I had a request to publish one like that. And finally, after a week passed, I figured, well, this is Jesus, and I need to do something about it. And I published that one in a month. And
Wow, that's
because
quick.
he was working behind me and providing ideas for that book.
So pretty much you go with the flow. You're inspired and then you write or publish. You're inspired and then you write and you publish. Or for example, with your poetry, it was your poetry book. It was something that you have been inspired to write and put forth for years until maybe you felt like the time was right in your life to where you wanted to publish a book um, for your daughters, which I think is really special because that's something that they can take with them for the rest of their lives and pass down to their children and their children's children and their children's children. And you never know how far that book will travel through your family tree. So it's really cool that you did that for them. Do your daughters write at all?
Just what?
Do your daughters write at all, poetry or
Oh, no. I'm close to my daughters, and they do what is best for them according
Right.
to what they want. Uh, my first marriage, I had two daughters,
Hmm.
and I thought they'd be here in town where I could see them pretty frequently.
Hmm.
But she moved them now 120 miles away
Wow.
uh, in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and she went to college for a second degree. So my daughters were down there for 2 years, and I went down every other weekend and picked them up
Wow.
and on Friday, and I took them back on Sunday. After 2 years, she got a job. She got her degree and she got a job in Atlanta. And
Wow.
she moved down there and stayed for 2 years on that job. So I went down once a month on a Saturday and spent the day with them. I went down early and stayed the day pretty late and drove back. After 2 years, she moved to Tampa, Florida.
Wow.
And they were down there for 2 years. And I went down 4 times a year for a long weekend. Uh, and after 2 years, she moved to Columbus, Ohio,
Wow.
and she worked up there for 2 years. And that was a lot closer than Tampa.
Yes.
And I drove up there uh, once every month or two and spent a weekend with them for 2 years, and she resigned. And then she moved back to Florida to Orlando, and they're still down there. She and the two daughters. The daughters are grown, and I'm still real close to them because of all those visits and
Right.
cards and telephone calls, gifts on holidays. And we communicate pretty regularly now and love each other very much.
Right. That's great. And so, what about your other two daughters?
My first, uh, my first wife had a daughter, and she is not as close, but we love each other. She lives near Nashville,
Okay.
and we see her more frequently than those in Florida.
Okay.
And my fourth daughter, she's the youngest. I had her with my wife Brenda. She got a degree from the University of Tennessee and took a job in New York City.
Oh, wow. So
She
she's up
got a
my
degree.
way.
She got a degree at UT, and she had to go for another year for an advanced degree at Vanderbilt in Nashville. Then she moved to New York City and met this girl that she fell in love with. So
Okay.
that daughter is gay.
Hmm.
They moved from New York City to Los Angeles, California, because they felt safer there for some reason,
Hmm.
and they get along real well. Uh, and they've changed my feelings about gay people because God and Jesus put love in their hearts, and they can follow the things I have in my book about finding a good companion. And a year and a half ago, she had a child, and
Wow.
that's my first grandson,
Mhm.
and he's real special to me.
Oh. And so, and the reason why we talk a lot about this here at the bookstore, why it's important to write and publish books, is because it's something that can be put in the hands of children, not just in our families, but in other places, So it's when you publish a book, it gets spread far and wide, as opposed to when you keep the information to yourself. So
Uh-huh.
really appreciate you for being an author, for wanting to publish things, even things that were close to your heart, just like your poetry. So we're very, very happy to have your book here in the store. Thank you so much for your time today. Is there any last things you want to say before we conclude our interview?
Well, I think Jesus was with us in this discussion, and I know he's following you. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate Jesus, and I hope everything works out well. And I appreciate you wanting to talk to me. You're special, and I care about you. I love you.
Thank you so much. And you are a very special and pleasant man as well. And so in everything that we do here, we acknowledge our creator and our Father in heaven. And so we refer to him as in Hebrew pronounced Yahweh. And so but we have so many testimonies as with this bookstore in general. This bookstore started with a prayer and it snowballed so quickly and it's gotten nationwide attention. So we're really just honestly humbled that he chose us to be his children and to serve his children and to serve the community. And so we really thank you for your time today. Everybody, please come to Hidden Gems Literary Emporium and check out our display for Mr. Michael Lewis of his book, How to Find a Good Companion. From less stress and more success. I love that because every time we work with someone, we typically say something like that to them. No stress, no pressure. And when you, like the name of your business, when you eliminate stress from your situation, you naturally tend to have more success. And
You
so,
saw in the back of that book, you saw this drawing of me when I was first writing that book 30 years ago. It's in the
wow.
back next to the last page.
Oh, okay. Who drew
And
these?
I had trouble not making a, a problem or a success of this book when
Hmm.
back at that time, the job that I had. So this was made with a different author in mind, but this was a thing about me
Wow.
and less stress and more success back in 30 years ago.
Wow. And I meant to ask you, who drew these? And why did you decide to put drawings in this book? Last question, I promise.
I was working with this guy named Sam Carmack who
Okay.
lives locally, and I don't think he's drawn for anybody else, but he drew these 8 characters, and
Wow.
he drew this one of me. And there's another one that really, I don't know, creates a special feeling.
Hmm.
Let's see here.
Let me know what page when you find it.
This is back in the chapter on extras, chapter 8.
Okay.
And I don't know that this really means anything, but he
I
drew
see.
that one. Sam drew that one, and he drew all the other individual ones, like
Well,
Henry that I had a photograph of. Here he is sitting with his family, his mom and
hmm,
dad, watching TV when he was
right,
about 30 years old. But they're all in there.
right.
He drew them all. He's a
Wow.
special person.
Okay.
I think I mentioned him up in the front of the book uh, as people who, yeah, acknowledgments to my editor and friend. It was a woman who helped me cover all this,
Okay.
and to my coach in confidence, Sam Carmack, for giving me encouragement, advice, and perspective. Anyway, he was real important to me, and I talk to him every now and then.
That sounds great.
It was great being with you today.
It was great being with you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you so much for your time today. And one more reminder to everyone to come on down to 55B Moore Street in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and check out our display for Mr. Michael Lewis and his book, How to Find a Good Companion. Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Okay, pull in those other 3 books too, okay?
We absolutely. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon, okay?
You're welcome. Thank
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.